Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this early morning. I'm Andrew Chiamagero, and this is a very wet, cold morning, but it's remarkably unique. We thank God for the water, for the rain. As an agriculture country, we thank God for that one. Well, Uganda is currently experiencing a rise in water levels of major water bodies and flooding in several areas of the country. Now, this quick rise in water levels has accelerated activities such as environmental degradation, loss of forest cover, encroachment on wetlands, lake shores and the riverbanks. Urbanization has in a way been created highly impenetrable surfaces like roads, roofs, pavements that have reduced the water infiltration into the soil. Now, interception and evapotranspiration capacity of forests and wetlands have all been distorted. The rising water levels and associated floods are already having negative impacts on the people and the development. This brings us to today's conversation dubbed Flooding versus Land Use, Early Warning Systems and the Minimization of the Impacts. To bring this conversation home, I'm honored to have Dr. Tom Okrut, the Executive Director of the National Environment Management Authority, who will join us a little later. But for now, we'll have Dr. Daniel Babikwa, Director, District Support Coordination and Public Education, still from NEMA. Now, those online, well, the hashtag is Environment Forum 2020. Follow us on Twitter and on Facebook, on NTV, as this conversation is live on YouTube and on Facebook. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Well, it's exciting to see you to have this conversation at a time when we have what I could dub as climate change. We have a crisis of climate change. There is a lot going on. What do you make of the entire cycle shift in climate?
Well, quite a number of things can be said. But one thing is that the process has been on for some time. Maybe we did not notice that the change was coming.
Okay.
Over the last 20 years or so, we have seen changing patterns in our weather systems. We have seen rain coming at a time when we least expected.
Oh, yeah.
And in amounts which we have not seen before. At times we have seen rain not coming at all when we expect it.
Indeed.
And that one has created a sense of confusion, especially among citizens of a country like Uganda, where agriculture is our main activity, and this agriculture is rain-fed, nature-based. So our patterns, because we have always known seasons, that between January and February you are preparing land to plant.
You're tilling it ready for... Yeah.
Then March rain starts, you plant. Then June, you begin harvesting. Then you have another dry season to prepare around July, August, September, to prepare for the planting for the next season. Now that one has changed because the patterns of rains have changed. Rain has been coming as and when it wants, not necessarily as we have predicted it.
As early.
Yes. Again, we have also observed that in some of the places where we used never to have rain, we have rain. And at times in very high amounts. In some places where there was so much, there's little. And this can be attributed to a number of things. One lesson people may have to learn about the nature of rain in Uganda. There's a common tendency to assume that our rains are made here. Our rains, some of the rain which rains in Uganda is made in Uganda, but some of it is made outside Uganda. And the bigger portion of it, about 60% of our rain, comes from outside Uganda.
Take us through that, Doctor. Where do they come through? Possibly, we could just know that it's from the Indian Ocean, but we understand the country is divided. It is zoned differently. That could be more enlightening.
Well, you realize that, for example, the rain that comes to here in the central, much of it comes from the east and the south. And the east, that's from the Indian Ocean. So the geographical processes that take place in the Indian Ocean directly affect the rain patterns in central Uganda. When you go to western Uganda and southwest, you realize that most of the rain that comes there comes from the Atlantic and the Congo
forest.
the Congo forests. Then when you go to the north, you notice that it comes from the Sudan and northeast. So you realize that about 60% of our rain. So the rain we get, which is locally made, is about 40%. So the changes away from here affect the amount of rain we get in this country.
Wow.
If there's so much winds blowing towards this side from the Atlantic Ocean, warm winds, they will certainly bring more moisture, which will turn into rain down here. If the same happens, for example, we have the monsoons in the east, still it will carry the same moisture, which will just get here and get more rain. And the same will happen when you come to the northeast. So you'll notice that's why we say that environmental issues cannot be localized only. They have an international kind of dimension.
They're intertwined in one another.
Exactly. Whatever you do here affects people far away from where you can even imagine. And whatever happens, for example, who would ever imagine that the rains here can be coming from Atlantic Ocean?
No one could ever imagine.
Yes.
Believe you me, my first time I had the ED talking about it, I was like, oh, so we can fail to have rain here, but it's raining cats and dogs in the north.
Exactly.
And because it's coming from the other side of the north. So with all this situation, Doctor, what is happening? The situation, river banks are busting, their banks, the rivers, water levels are rising. What could be the cause of all this?
Well, a number of reasons. One, we cannot exonerate ourselves from what is happening. I've said much of the rain comes from out, but 40% of the rain comes from within. And see, the rain which comes from within is generated from the geographical features from within the country. The forests, the wetlands, the mountains, the rivers, and all those elements of the environment. So when there is sunshine, of course, moisture goes up and then turns down into water. Now, what has happened over some time? We have interfered with the character of our environment. For example, we have invaded the forests and cleared them in some places.
As a nation?
Yes. The percentage of forest cover has reduced tremendously in the years past. The percentage of wetlands has also reduced so much. Now, even if the rain had not increased in volume, the impact of reduction of the vegetation directly has a direct impact on the effect on the nature, on the way.
On the 40% we should have gotten.
Exactly. So in the past, if the 40% came when all the vegetation was around, much of it would be trapped and to get into the ground and would slowly come in under springs, like springs under the ground. But right now, because of the removal of most of the vegetation cover, whatever rain comes, it rushes straight into the what? To the water. If you look at many of the river banks and lake shores, people have farmed and grown crops and cleared up to the lake shore or river bank itself. Now, when you do that, one thing happens. The vegetation, one of the value of the vegetation is to hold the water, to hold the speed of the flow of the water. And when the vegetation is not there, the speed is not in any way checked.
So this covers the trees, the forest, the swamps, the wetlands.
Exactly. So it comes so fast and joins the major water body. And yet in the past, the vegetations were regulating factors
to the water body.
Yes. If you look at wetlands, for example, wetlands are resting places for water. They act like a sponge, sponges. When it rains, the water would come and sit. When it gets drier, the water moves out, it begins releasing water slowly by slowly into the water body. But now if you look at most of our wetlands, they have been invaded.
Oh, yes.
Instead of absorbing the water and releasing slowly, the water just comes
And goes through.
Now when it goes through, those people, and this has been coupled with another practice. People have extended where they're not supposed to extend. They've established homes, industries, and all sorts of things, infrastructure along the shorelines. Now, when the water comes that fast, the people who are staying those become immediate victims of the floods. And this is exactly what has been happening now. If you look at the laws that manage the lake shores and wetlands and riverbanks, it's clearly stated 200 meters away from the lake, the highest water mark of the lake, is considered a regulated area.
Okay.
And that means, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do activities there, but the activities you undertake in that area should be properly guided by technical people from NEMA, from the Ministry of Environment. You should consult and they guide you on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Unfortunately, many of our people do not do that.
Why do you think they're not doing this? Because ideally, if these places that are gazetted, doctor, and people know that, look, this place is gazetted, you shouldn't do any business at 200 meters past the initial mark, the last highest mark of water body, you shouldn't be a resident, you shouldn't build any permanent structure there. But they go ahead and they even have land titles. Where could we be having the gaps? Is it the leadership? Is it the crooks within the system that are failing it? What could be the problem?
There are quite a number of gaps. One, our Ugandans, we have one problem. We are very proud when we break the law.
Oh, yeah.
We want to appear champions of evil. When somebody tells you don't build here, he says, I'll build and then you see me. I'll see what you can do.
There is that attitude.
That impunity, that attitude, that's one of it. Because, of course, there are also people who are not aware.
That this is gazetted area?
Yes, some of these guys, they may not be aware. Others may be aware, but they have issues.
Conflicting thoughts.
Somebody can tell you, I've had this land since 1954 with my title.
Before the land was gazetted.
Yes. So, to convince such a person becomes a bit difficult. But incidentally, we have not found bigger problem with such people. They understand better. But even when they understand, there are those who come and tell them, you sell it to me, and I will show these people that I can use it.
The attitude.
That attitude. It's a very wrong attitude. Then we also have an issue of, you see, we have got the challenge of implementation of some of the laws and guidelines.
I agree.
At one level, if you look at NEMA as an authority, NEMA is supposed to work with the lead agencies. And these lead agencies,
implementing.
Yes, they're supposed to be directly involved in implementation of the laws and regulation of this country. When it comes, for example, to wetlands and riverbanks, the lead agency should be the wetland department in the Ministry of Environment. Then if it comes to issues with the forestry, the lead agency is NFA. To do with animals, to be WUA. And then in urban authorities, environmental issues, the lead agencies are the urban authorities. So they have the direct responsibility to do the implementation. But at times, those agencies have got internal intrigue, but also genuine challenges. See, managing environment requires resources.
Oh, yeah.
Environment, unlike other things, is one thing everybody fights for. Because environment is the storehouse of the resources which feed us, which sustain us. So the poorest and the richest,
we all depend on this.
Exactly. And they're fighting. So somebody wants to grow yams, another wants to build an industry. But all of them feel they have a right to that.
Oh, yes.
Now, and if the more you try to regulate them, the more the conflict comes in. Now, some want to appear more strong. As NEMA, we have always tried to do the right thing. We give the information, we educate, but there's a level you reach and you find it becomes very difficult when you get some intransigent individuals, some arrogant people, some who say, oh, shall do it, some who believe they're
above the law.
They're above the law.
Yeah.
So we have that kind of element, which is unfortunately growing. And I think it's a general problem in our population. The way people respect laws, respect government programs, is they're just out to say no. And that one causes a more serious problem to implementers. Now, if you get to, for example, look at NEMA as an authority, we are an authority with a very high sounding office. But the challenge we have, we cannot be everywhere at all times.
You can't police the entire nation.
And if you look at our management structure, environmental management is a decentralized function. Local governments have got first frontline responsibility to manage the environment within their areas of jurisdiction. But they will always tell you environment is one of the least funded and least supported functions, sectors. So
Doctor, do you think the leaders we have in this country, because what you're saying is very pertinent, and the rich and the poor, we all depend on the same. If government knew how sensitive, how critical this was, don't you think would have enough funds? Let's try to juxtapose it. Is it a question that funds are released but they never reach the intended goal of the program, or there are funds that are less as compared to the programs that should be executed?
I think, one, the framework has issues. There's an assumption that environmental issues are cross-cutting. And because they are cross-cutting, every sector must have a portion of money put aside for environment. Unfortunately, the different sectors don't feel they have that duty.
So it's duplicated among other agencies.
Exactly. So you find, for example, the Ministry of Works, which constructs roads. If you tell them the environmental aspect is key, they may understand. But what is priority number one for them is to have a road on the ground.
Oh, yes.
And every road you create has an environmental impact.
Indeed.
You create flooding, you create barrow pits, which are never covered, and then all those things keep coming.
Wow.
Then you get to, for example, health. Health, the common thing about health for a long time has been about treating diseases, but forgetting that most of the diseases can arise from a poor environment.
Oh, yes.
So if you managed environment well, most of the diseases. So, but you look at the health sector, their focus is drugs, health centers.
Personnel.
Exactly.
Yes.
But where are the sickness? Where do the sicknesses which affect these people bring them to the health sector?
The environment where they
live. They come from the environment. So, but look at the portion of money from the health sector that goes that preventive public health sector. It's not adequate. And yet, if we did so, we could reduce the expenditures. So we have those issues.
We have to strike a balance. Doctor, now let's look at, I'm very grateful. Doctor's given us an insight on what could be the triggers of what we're having today with regards to environmental change or climate change. But now going deep into the bigger questions, Doctor, Lake Victoria, Lake Albert, Lake Choga, and all the major water bodies in the country have either burst their banks or the water levels have risen. Why now?
Well, a number of reasons. One, as I said earlier, most of the flooding that takes place in Uganda starts in Lake Victoria. And the reason is simple. Lake Victoria is a basin. If you look at the geography of its formation, there's what were downwoping and upwoping. Sometimes, over 400,000 years ago, some tectonic movements happened and the depression occurred. So rivers changed direction. Rivers who are going to the Congo now turned back. If rivers which are going into the Indian Ocean from Kenya, they turned back and they feel this depression. Now that has continued. That when there is rain in the Congo, and that part of Rwanda, it will end here. When there's rain in northern Tanzania,
it will
end in Lake Victoria. When there's rain in Kenya, western Kenya,
yes,
it will end up in Lake Victoria. So when Lake Victoria gets overfilled, then the only outlet
the rivers
is the Nile. Now the Nile feeds into Lake Choga. And yet there are also other rivers which come from the Mount Elgon
that plug into
that one,
wow,
and on and so on and so forth. So we receive water from many sources. And again, if you go to central and northern Uganda, it's more of a flood plain. So naturally water comes. Whether we have had rain or not, there are times when we have not had rain here, but you get floods.
That's the shocking bit.
Yes.
And you hear calls, people are saying we are flooding, and you're like, wait a minute, with all this sun?
Yes, because the rain comes from, for example, if it rains in Rwanda, the Kagera River, Rwanda and Burundi, will get filled.
Oh, yeah.
And will fill Victoria. If it rains in western Kenya, those rivers, Nzoya, Nyando, they will get filled.
And they will fill up.
And they fill up. So even our small rivers here will get filled and fill what? So it will continue and continue. So basically, but then on top, as I said earlier, we have also mismanaged the catchment areas. The waters cannot be regulated, they cannot be controlled. So whatever comes down ends immediately into the water. That's why you get those floods. And then you realize people have went where they were not supposed to be. People are complaining of flooding, yes, but they are living in wetlands.
And the rivers, we had a case scenario in Nyamwamba, in Kasese. The riverbank, Nyamwamba, burst its banks, and the effect was appalling. People died, property was lost, gardens were all destroyed. Going back to this, do you believe our leaders are doing us justice to explain to us, as residents, as citizens, to get out of the way of these rivers? Because they actually, you provide and you say, this is a zoned area, it is a wetland, this is a river, much as it's not here, there is a river here, so that people could actually be in the know.
Yeah, true. You know the challenge we have, as I told you earlier, Ugandans have changed. The Ugandans I knew when I was a young person are not the Ugandans we have today.
What is so unique about us now? We are the Ugandans today,
yes,
Doctor.
see, one thing is, I'll tell you, don't pass here.
Yes.
You say, let me pass there and see.
The first question I ask, why?
Why? Then let me see. Then you tell them, please, don't build there. Say, this is my land.
Have the title deed?
Yes. So he goes ahead and does the same. Now, what has happened? For example, I think to a great extent, government has done its work in terms of creating awareness about the risk areas. I'll give you an example. Before we had the landslides in Bududa, there was an area warning from NEMA and other agencies saying this place is going to burst. This place is going to have a crisis very soon. Let people move. People say, no, our ancestors were buried here. So you say, do you also want to be buried? Say, no. The spirits which keep us, which protects us, are living here.
It went culture.
Yeah. At the end of the day, when the
landslide
came
down,
people got buried, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
Now, government went ahead and moved people away.
To Kiriandongo.
To Kiriandongo. These guys came back. So you want to steal our land. So now, who has a problem now?
We Ugandans. Maybe, you see, Doctor, I come from the school of thought, possibly at times they don't have enough enlightenment as to why this is being done. If they're not given a helicopter view of why government is making this move and for how long is it going to be, they possibly have a right to resist in one or the other.
Partly true and partly not. I'll give you an example. One day I was doing some work in Palisa, and I met by then a cow, the chief administrative officer. We were addressing sub-count of chiefs. And he gave us a very moving example of his experience when he became a civil servant in 1974.
Wow. He's still a cow up to today?
By then he was a Gombola chief. He was a young Gombola chief in 1974. Maybe now he has retired. But by the time I met, it was around 2014, he was a cow. And he said that one day, as a Gombola chief, he found one old man seated on his veranda at 8 a.m. in the office and said, Mzee, come in. The old man came in. Asked him, where did you come from? When described the way I had come from, it was about 12 miles, not kilometers, miles away.
Oh, God.
He says, now what brings you? He says, brings you here? He said, yes, I've come because I want permission to cut a tree in my land to finish my house.
He came to Agombola Chief,
yes,
to get validation to do all that.
Exactly. So
wow.
Now I asked the group, have you ever seen such a person in days?
In this day?
Yes, come and do that. Now, those are guys who one would think were not enlightened.
But they used to do the
yes.
wrong thing.
See, it's not about being to school. It's not about. It's a question of understanding and respecting the government and
policy.
Yes. And government gives guidance because it understands. It has taken time to understand. But what people say, Ugandan things will not work. Our laws. But for example, I'll give you another example. There was a time, even now, we know very well. We have done so much education about the dangers of polythene, kavera.
Oh yes, plastic.
Most of the Ugandans know out of our information, but they still say, I've not seen somebody sick.
We've not buried anyone.
Those are some of the things. People keep asking wrong questions, giving wrong answers, and being proud of saying no, it's doing the wrong things.
That's what the problem is. Okay, now, Doctor, is it only the changes in the land use that have such impacts on the environment? And if so, to what extent, if we did not utilize the land the way it is meant to be used for, now we're going on the issue of the land, what would experience, would we still get these bad effects of the floods and all?
Yeah, well, there would still be, but it would be at a lesser extent. For example, if you do not clear the vegetation in the catchment, naturally the vegetation would play its role of holding the water so that it doesn't flow very fast to get into the water bodies.
It will be the encampment center. It should
exactly. If you don't build in a flood plain, then even if the floods came, they will not affect you.
Okay.
But because you have built in a flood plain, naturally the water will find you there, and the water always finds its course. It will never go where it has never gone. So if you see a drainage channel, no water will always pass here. But I'm being told the people are sold plots of land in the dry season, and they don't have the wisdom to see that, but where does the drainage go here? And then one day I was still teaching in Mackay, I had one of my students disappear for some. I said, what happened? I said, when we woke up, the basins were swimming. We were floating. So the water was entering through the windows.
Oh, that was serious now.
Yes. So we have seen this happen. Recently, went to Luzira, some flats, maybe about Tropati, somewhere. The water was entering through the windows into the flats. And I saw the owner now fidgeting, using a water pump to pump out the water. But the water which was coming in was much more and much more force than the water which was. See, now we question our wisdom.
You see, Doctor, there have been assumptions that these land titles, people like those, and we had the same incident that happened at Panda Pier, still in Luzira side, Panda Pier, where people, water really came and it really damaged a lot of their lives. But Doctor, NEMA knows these land titles. It comes out and says this. Why doesn't NEMA take an affirmative action and take these people to courts of law and take them before the authorities and say, look, the land title you have, it could be valid, but you're in a gazetted area. How far, what efforts does NEMA make to make sure that someone doesn't lose billions of shillings in a property that's going to be submerged by water over time?
Oh, thank you for that. You know, one thing I have to say, those things look easy to
on paper,
but not that easy. For example, many of us who get titles in those places do it in a way of defiance. They are aware they're going
in a wetland.
They're going to the wrong place, and they're aware of what is likely to happen. They insist. Unfortunately, NEMA does not issue titles. So
it's the land board,
the Ministry of Lands, which issue titles. So by the time somebody comes to NEMA, he already has a title.
Oh yes.
And when he has that title, he has already even made a plan. Actually, many of them don't even come to NEMA. They are just found investing and are challenged to produce an EIA certificate. Now they begin saying, first, I've got a land title, I've been here for so many years, this land. They give you all explanations. Now, because of that, you realize that much as NEMA would like to do some of the things, the processes are not very easy. One, they will say they would need the cancelling of titles. The most ideal thing would be to cancel titles. But
it comes with compensation.
Yes, NEMA can only recommend the titles are cancelled by the issuer. And those things have to go through Parliament.
Oh, yes. It's a long process.
And we don't have influence on the direction of Parliament.
As NEMA?
Yes.
Yes.
There are many times we have advised and they have acted differently. Based on their wisdom, they are the lawmakers, they see maybe a broader perspective than us, so they give their
direction.
Their direction. And we don't dispute it because we are servants of government. We listen to government. We offer advice, but we don't have the powers to force government or to force action. See, the role of technical people is to provide technical information.
Technical support.
All the details we provide. Now the decisions at the end are done at another level.
Absolutely. Yeah. Doctor, does this in one way or the other, I still want to look at NEMA because it's the authority. It has the mandate to protect the environment. Does NEMA take it upon itself to find possibly ad hoc committees that are within the Ministry of Lands that they can share information and intelligence that, look, Andrew has gotten land here and this land is not going to work out, so that Dr. Daniel can come through and say, look, this is not going to be possible because of A, B, C, D. And even when they run back to lands, they say there was a glitch on that, this is cancelled.
Yeah, we have done a lot of work. For example, about 4 or 5 years ago, the issue of cancelling titles was top on the agenda.
Oh, yes.
But it hit a snag somewhere. First, they said, where are the wetlands? Are they gazetted?
They were not gazetted.
They were not gazetted. So you could not do much. Then they said, okay, before you do any cancellation, can you provide us evidence with where the wetlands are, where the titles are, and who is there? So we got funding to do what they call the Wetland Atlas. And we began with 3 wetland atlases. We found one for Wachiso district, Kampala districts, and Mukono district, because they're the most affected. Oh, yes. So the purpose was to provide information to those who make a decision to know that actually an evaluation had been done. So we went again to get more funding together with the Ministry of Environment. We got a nationwide atlas for all the wetlands, which actually is available now. And that was supposed to provide guidance on decision making regarding the cancellation of the titles. Now, when you provide that as NEMA, that's where you can stop.
That's how far you can go.
As an authority. The final pen, which says cancel, is not ours.
So where do we go from here? Because I understand the technical support you've given, the different awareness campaigns you've done still don't yield.
Yeah, but I think it's not yet too late. We can still do much.
What can we do?
One, I think we need commitment
as
citizens of this country. That commitment calls us to recognize that we have a role to play. If you look at our constitution, this Article 39, it says every Ugandan has got a right to a clean and healthy environment. But I think again, I think it's either Regulation 17 says every Ugandan has also got the duty to make sure that that clean and healthy environment exists.
So there is a right and there is a duty that comes with it.
Exactly. But then, when you have anything to do with environment, our people say, where is NEMA?
Every time I see anything environment, I'm like, NEMA.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
And then we are also aware that the implementation of the laws of environment is the structure is very clear. NEMA is the principal agency, but we've got lead agencies which are implementing at every level. Now, each of these implementing agencies, at times, for some good or bad reasons, have not been able to play their role as expected. And that failure to play that role has had a major impact on the environment. For example, if you expect the wetland development, make sure that people don't settle in the wetlands. And then you get people settling in wetlands.
And they have titles.
Yes. Now, NEMA, okay, there's always a contradiction. Somebody has got a title in the wrong place. NEMA comes in. So actually, why we have been caught up and accused many times is that because as supervisors, we have got a duty to make sure that the other people do their work.
Oh, yes.
But then we got caught up in the process of helping someone to do his work, so we are seen to be the one working.
Oh, yeah.
So we say, when is NEMA? Because when there is a problem in Lubiji, we cannot keep quiet.
You have to go.
We have to go.
I saw the struggle when you're relocating people from Lubiji.
Exactly. Now others will disappear, then NEMA will appear. Now we have the new the National Environment Act 2019, which has now given us some powers, which I think will help us if we have the goodwill of all Ugandans, maybe to make things work.
ND3, the approach they are saying they're going to go, it's the program approach.
Yes.
Do you think it's going to bring all this to light? Because they're saying government projects and programs are all being rolled out, but people are not acting as they should act. Now, the new approach, as the nation goes to ND3, according to the new framework, they're going to go the program's way. Will this help us as a nation?
Well, before, you see, we must ask ourselves what went wrong. At times,
duplicating of work, because your money that should have been given to NEMA, it's distributed in other state agencies that are not implementing.
Exactly.
But every stone we get, we throw at NEMA.
Exactly. Because, you know, at times, it's not the method of work, it's the people
Personally.
and the thinking that informs what people do. For example, if you look at the way environment is managed in some places, you realize that, one, the thinking in development has to be very clear.
From the mentor.
Yes, the challenge you have had, we tend to separate environment from development. The assumption is that you can develop while ignoring the environment. It's true you can do it, but at your own peril.
It's not long lasting.
It's not sustainable. And when we talk about sustainable, we have to really understand it has to be sustainable. It has to consider the three pillars: society, economy, and environment. Society, because whichever development we do is to meet the needs of the society.
We thrive with the society.
Yes. Economy, because it's the economy is the engine that helps us to meet the needs of society. And then so environment, because environment is like the foundation. It's the storehouse of all the resources that generate that generate the resources that help the economy to stay. But now our tendency is to think about, for example, they have
development.
But remember, every development we do draws from the environment. Some of the resources are exhaustible. They are not replaceable. Some, even which are replaceable, you don't have a clear structure and system for having them managed sustained
the right way.
Then the mindsets of the people. Do the people recognize that the environment has got a role to play in their sustainability? Or they just look at it as an area to exploit? When I was in school, I remember in the secondary school in the 80s, there was a thinking, an interpretation of development, which was very wrong. I came to understand, to think about it again later. People say, development is human ability to exploit nature. And we passed exams
with that answer. Wow.
But now, if you think like that, you forget one thing.
You cannot shoot the right way.
Yes, you can't shoot the right way. You are trying to develop but you are actually cutting your own legs, and you cannot move on where you want to go, because whatever you gain, you're going to lose in the future. The compensation, the payment for the losses are so high. Some Ugandans will tell you that, well, this environmental thing is an international thing.
Oh, yes.
It's a European thing. But then, even if it was a European thing, do we know how much the Europeans invest in their environment? Do we know their systems? Do you know how they have created a mindset that's clear about the dangers and the threats? Do we know how much they think about sustainability? We don't. We are living a subsistence life, and we live hand to mouth, we live a day. Some people began thinking, what will happen 100 years from now? For us, say, if I can get cassava from tomorrow, well and good, I can move on.
Doctor, don't you think this entirely, I will throw it again, don't you think it's a leadership problem? Because way back in time when I was young, in Nakar division, by then our representative in parliament was a gentleman called Oyet something. It was called Womatete. He was a representative in Nakar division. And he would take time with our leaders to come, and they would have those sub-county meetings. And they would tell us what direction is the nation taking. Back in the days. Today we don't have leaders come back anymore. Now they're with us because it's the season. After this they're going to move. Don't you think it is something that, much as you're putting it to the attitudes and the mindsets, can we tweak it a little bit that it goes further, that even the people we are sending forward should actually be questioned and interrogated on what strategies do they have and how are they directing the nation to the right direction of the policies?
Oh, that's very true. You know, the challenge you have, the leaders you have are as good as they are.
Doctor, you also have the leaders.
Yes.
You don't exempt yourself. The leaders we have.
Yes, but I'm just beginning.
Yes.
We need to understand ourselves. One, what is our priority in life?
As humans.
As a leader.
Yes.
What is the priority of our leaders? Is it the next vote, or is it the well-being of my society? What do I lose if I win the vote and the environment gets destroyed?
That's a big one. Yeah? That's a big one.
So we have to really ask ourselves, where do people have their hearts? Are the hearts and the hands and the minds in the same place? The heart may be somewhere else, but practically the hands are doing things very different, and the mind is focusing somewhere different. So at the end of the day, you have a contradictory person standing before you, telling you the right, what he assumes to be right, because he tells you what you want to hear. Because we've had, recently we're moving out with our minister, trying to assess the damage caused by the floods. Oh. We went down to Luzira, went down to Butabika, and we're trying to talk to people. And you know what they're telling us? For us, we want posho.
But you're from NEMA.
Eh? We don't tell us. For us, we want posho and beans. We're talking about environment. Where were you when we were coming here? And then you ask them, how long have you been here? For us, we were born here. And then someone tells you he's born here. And you see, this man is 40 years. And you know very well, 40 years ago, there was nothing like a settlement in that place. And yet there are local leaders who are actually siding with the same people because they have an expectation of continued leadership in those places. So we need to create critical awareness among the leaders. We also need to challenge the leaders who we send out into leadership positions on real issues.
Indeed.
Now, how do Ugandans think about themselves and about the future of this country? We talk about patriotism, but what are the indicators of a patriot?
The key elements are not shared. Yeah, true.
Well, some time back I was called to go and talk to heads of institutions on the relationship between environment and patriotism. Then I thought, how do I talk about this? I thought this, patriotism is about believing and supporting and trusting and loving your nation. But what is a nation? What makes a nation is not the name of Uganda. what makes a nation are the things that make up Uganda. The rivers, the mountains, the forests, the people, the animals. They are the ones which will define Uganda as Uganda. If you don't respect and take care of them,
you can't.
Then you are actually not a patriot. You can't be proud of being a Ugandan when you are actually destroying Uganda.
Nice.
But that's what people are doing. They're destroying Uganda, but they're saying they're patriots.
They're developing. They're saying they're developing.
They're developing. And you are in the process of developing, you are actually undermining the future of your own children. We are where we are because people who came earlier than us had a heart for this country. And
they made environment-sensitive decisions.
Exactly.
Wow, it's a conversation we're still having this early morning. The hashtag on Twitter, it's Environment 2020, Environment Forum 2020. I want to thank those already online, and I've been joined by Dr. Tom Okrut, who happens to be the Executive Director of NEMA. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Nice to
Happy New Year for starters. You've not talked to the media since last year, I guess. Doctor, how are we faring up? All this that's going on, should we say, are these signs of climate change?
Well, as a scientist, yes.
Oh, should we be worried?
No, we shouldn't be worried. Our work is now, how do we live within that change?
Okay.
How do we live within that change? So, as a scientist, and who has looked at trends, we are, by last year, July, we already had information about what was going to happen here in terms of the weather from other fellow scientists. And we notified the government that we're expecting to have a change in the weather pattern and the rain pattern. And these are the implications. What we're now seeing is what are the implications. And all this is associated with really a lot of changing things in the atmosphere, and which has changed the rain patterns, which has changed also the sunshine, everything has changed. So I don't want to be a skeptic, because there are people who are saying, no, this is change, it's just one of the changes because we last had this experience in 1962. Yes.
Very much so.
That's so. But this year went beyond 1962. The water rose in the lake by 2 centimeters more than it was in 1962.
Could we say the cyclones in the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic affected the entire cycle?
Those are part of the system. The weather system, the global weather system is the one. Those changes start somewhere, and then they get impact. They impact on us at the end of it as people who are here. So that's why in the climate science we talk about adaptation. How do we adapt to this new changing environment? And one of the, fortunately for the country called Uganda here, if we responded to the national environmental laws, if we adhered to them, just only that, we'd already have responded to, we already adapted to climate change. So some of the pains that we're experiencing are self-inflicted because of the actions of the citizens of this country. Yes. So the flooding that you see, the legal definition that of the floods defines from where the water takes beyond the normal, because we normally have the lowest water level. And we've had a lot of average. From 1962, the water has been going down, then we got some average so that we know that's the lowest water level. Then we say, okay, for a lake, stay 200 meters away from that. Don't go there. From that lowest level up to here, don't
do
go.
Business. Don't
do anything. Don't build a house there. Maybe you can do recreation, but don't invest there. A river, 100 meters. A big river like Nile, 100 meters. That was the definition. And also, don't clear off wetlands. So those are in the law. Now, people think that, no, I've not seen water here. You're just lying. I've lived here for the last 15 years. This place is dry.
Is that one of the biggest challenges NEMA is facing? Because every time you go to implement something, someone has to first take you back.
Yeah.
My great people were here.
No, but what we find out lies. We now have the science. We have a GIS technology which can run us this location 10, 15 years ago. Actually, right now, in our facility, we can get a map of the area 20 years ago.
Wow.
We can look at it, how it was 20 years ago.
So if you tell us you're here 20 years ago?
We just check, and we find that you're not there. We've had cases here. So 20 years ago, most of the people are not settled where they are. So, but of course, where people lived for long and there was no impact, we said that water will come, is going to come. The reason for buffering 200 meters was actually to protect you from these excessive events. Now, we have lived it, we have seen it.
It has come
It has come, it has come to stay. But when it has come, it has hit on individuals. People have been affected greatly. Maybe, I don't know, you've been seeing, I think NTV have followed, you've
Yes,
shown
we've followed closely.
closely. You've seen what is happening in Lake Choga. You've seen what's happening in Lake Albert, particularly
Yes,
Lake Albert
we've
now.
seen that in Pakwachi, Bundibujo.
Yeah, and Bulisa.
Yes.
It's really, that has never been recorded. But as scientists, we expected that most of the people who have been impacted actually went into that part. We did demarcation in South Busoga Forest, down there in Mayuge district. With the community before, we said, you guys, let us indicate, don't, beyond where we stay, don't go there, get out. Some guys said,
They didn't listen.
they listened, others listened. Now, when the water rose, exactly where we stopped,
That's where it stopped.
where the water stopped.
Oh, God.
And, and then the people call us, yeah, you are.
NEMA, please come through.
No, they appreciated our work. Those who left said that it was correct.
Absolutely.
That you taught us and gave us time. That's why to change. So sometimes also poverty has issues that can't find people there. People don't have anywhere to settle. And there is no organized social planning.
Oh, yes.
Planning for people.
Do
And
you
then for the
think-
people coming to the city, Kampala, people just arrive and you have nowhere to. There's no designated place that when you arrive in Kampala and you have no income,
You call
this is where
your
you're going to
brother.
stay. But this is where everybody arrives here and tries to find a life. And so those fragile ecosystems have been the target areas for settlement here and riverbanks and whatever. So, but they are the people, that's where they have been impacted greatly.
Do you think the issue of compensation in one or the other sabotaged the movement of these people from these particular areas that are water prone?
Well, compensation is, even according to the law, within these 200 meters, we said if you are there, we can't compensate you. Because we already told you that don't be there. However, as my colleague was saying, some of the leaders there
Political issue.
should say, no, it is your right to be compensated because you've lived there for maybe 15 years and be compensated. But I don't know. Logically, we've gone to places like Mone in Lake Choga. Even if you wanted to stay there one more day, you can't. Because you're in the wrong place. So logically, some people just say, help us to get out.
Wow.
Let us get out of here, just to get to another place. And that was done by the OPM.
Wow.
Gave them relief and transported them to wherever they came. And they say it was the wrong place.
It was a good one.
It's not good. Compensation is, yeah,
It is only politicized, and that's why it
but
gets out
it's
of
wrong to compensate somebody who is in a
gazetted
place
area.
which is already designed that he should not be there. Basically, it should be the other way around.
They should be compensating
Government. Yeah.
Doctor, with the current challenges facing our environment, how come you allowed the land use change in Bugoma Forest for sugarcane growing?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. We did not allow land use change as NEMA.
Aha. Engage us now.
Yeah, I'll engage you. Yeah. Bugoma Forest has been there for etc. And Bugoma Forest is there. At first, I want to allay the fears that are in the media that Bugoma Forest has disappeared.
That has always been something we've always
Wrong.
wondered about.
Bugoma Forest is 452 square kilometers. And the area of land that we call Changwali, that the king of Bunyoro claimed is only 22 square miles of that. So if 22, assuming that was part of the Bugoma as original versus the other one, now you say everything had disappeared. But let me give you the story. 1993, when the government came in, they are doing this issue of the previous injustices to the kingdoms. And the Bunyoro kingdom was one of those which say that they had lost property as a result. So I think the government issued a restitution order, 1993, to return property which was taken wrongly from those kingdoms. Okay?
Yes.
So that was done. And I think it worked. In Buganda here, you know what happened. Things were returned. Bunyoro still agitated that they haven't got their land. That land, which they say was 22 square miles, belonged to they say it belonged to them, It has been theirs for their cultural use. It was not part of the Bungoma forest, part of the Bungoma forest, and that was the argument by the Bungoma Kingdom. So, 2012, government finally decided to return
that
proportion to Bunyoro Kingdom. Through the Attorney General, Leti Nyombi is one who wrote the letter. Said now that property is actually yours. We understood and say it is yours. Under the restitution order, you qualify to be the owner of property. So he was also informed later on by the Solicitor General that this is your property. You can lease it, you can title it.
Whichever you choose.
Whichever you choose, as you learn. So he chose to go and title it. Came to the Ugandan Commission, which is the owner of government land. Uganda Commission wrote to Minister of Land, say, please survey and give a title to Bunyoro Kingdom. And the title was given to Bunyoro Kingdom for those 22 square miles. That is 2012. NEMA is not in the equation. Okay?
NEMA is not in the equation,
No,
it's government.
It's government, yeah.
Yes.
So, Kingdom wanted money. So they leased their land because it's my land.
So they lease it to whoever wants to do the sugar cane.
Yeah. Wema Sugar, you want to give us money? Lease land. So that is how it transacted.
Okay.
Now, Wema Sugar, because it's going to grow sugar cane, must be the growing of industrial scale of industrial farming or farming at large scale requires you to get permission from NEMA.
Yes, to operate.
For you now to do that. Okay. In the meantime, NFA, which had been holding the land, it looks NFA was not looped in the decision of their government.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Yes.
It looked was not looped into the other decisions.
Yes.
Nevertheless, they went to court, to the High Court. The High Court said, no, the land belongs to the king. Bunyoro Kingdom. You have nothing to... So NFA appealed to the stay of execution to the High Court. They lost. They appealed to the stay of execution at the Court of Appeal. It was thrown out. So now, Wema Sugar come and say that we want to develop this land.
You have to come to NEMA to get the certificate.
To get certificate. So that's how we come in. That's how we come in. Because our work is now, okay, this is your land. Like we do, we say, okay, let's now go inside and see what is in the land. So we went inside, saw the actual picture of the land. How much was actually forest, how much was free land, how much was land which had been degraded, rivers, wetlands, within that system. So we're able to map out that there are about 9 square miles of forests, not continuous, but within that place. Then we also noticed that about 3 square miles was now maize. It had been taken by Onanchi. Yeah, taken away. Wow. Then we had also the rivers and whatever. We mapped all of them. And there was, inside there are places which had been forests, but the trees had been cut off, and it was there, empty there. But now a lot of grass growing there. So that's how we come in. So our work was that with this, this is how you are going to operate. So we said, okay, after looking at your land, we cannot allow you to cut all the trees. The forest that is existing, you are not going to stay. It has to stay. You accept it has to stay. You only go and plant. You're only going to plant sugarcane in these areas where the land had been degraded before. That's where you're going to plant your sugarcane. The rest of the forest area, and we even said the other one which is degraded, get it back from the Wananchi, but replant with the commercial trees. But that is all. So we really truncated the land, and basically.
So your job was technically to advise you on how to operate.
Operate, yeah. So we allowed them 9 square kilometers and allowed them that the other one now, you do ecotourism, own the forest, but use it for ecotourism purposes. That's the certificate we issue to Wema Sugar. So it is not NEMA that gave the land. As has been portrayed. It's wrong.
Okay.
So the story is there.
Okay, well, there you have it. You and I, if you had an issue about the Bungoma forest, especially those who are online, and you said, now that you have the ED, we need to put this question of Bungoma forest to his face, that he responds. He has actually articulated the very issue very lightly and very greatly there. The hashtag is environmental forum 2020. The hashtag, keep the conversation going. We have this running on Twitter and on Facebook. We'll take a break for now and we'll be back shortly. Forum 2020. Andrew Chamagero, and we're live from Kampala Spinner Conference Center. With me, I have the ED of the National Environment Management Authority, that is Dr. Tom Okrut, and I have Dr. Daniel Babikwa. Daniel Babikwa, who happens to be the Director, District Support and Coordination and Public Education, still under NEMA. They've explained a couple of things, and what's our call to action? It's something we'll do later. But those online contributing to this conversation, thank you so much. Kasasa, you say this is it. I love it when big bosses in government come out and they say we have a challenge of egocentric Ugandans who don't respect environment. Thank you so much, Dr. Babikwa. And Patricia here said something to Dr. Tom. Said, thank you, Dr. Tom. I rest my case. It was business as usual. NEMA was never in the picture from the start. Now, going forward with all that we are seeing, to start with, what are we able to predict the future environmental change? Dr. Krut, from where you stand, these environmental occurrences, we seem to have been taken by surprise. And you said earlier on that you had information from the international agencies that work hand in hand with NEMA that, oh, we are expecting these weather changes that are coming and they're going to be there to us. Should we expect more of these? And if so, what is the strategy in place for us as a nation?
Well, I think it is based on what we've done before. What is instructive is to have a receptor to information that comes. Once you're a receptor to information, then you act on it. I tell you, part of the work of my institution is environmental, in relation that is trying to do assessment of environmental risks and then predicting whether the risks are there and they can be able to come and what's the manifestation. But quite often, we are sort of in Uganda used to disaster response.
Oh yes, crisis management.
Not disaster prevention. My institution is on the disaster prevention.
Okay.
And that's why we of course, my colleagues have talked about the laws.
Yes.
We've talked about programming that we do.
Yes.
We've talked about partnership that we do with other people to provide us with the science and also the science that we generate so that we can use it to manage the environment. So in terms of predicting changes that are likely to come in the environment, some models that indicate, you see, you have to look at a segment of the environment that you are interested in. That you're interested in. For instance, now, if you're interested in the water bodies of Uganda, right now, this is it. We have the water, plenty of it, but it's not going to be there all the time.
Oh yes.
If you looked at the data from Lake Victoria, around 1923, 20 is there. Lake Victoria was not where it was. It was far away. There was a boat. There was a boat traveling from Ginger Road, roundabout there. Not Ginger, the roundabout.
Yes.
Where there is a Kidum house.
Yes, yes.
There was a river there. People used to row a canal have to where the lake was.
No, doctor.
I'm not giving you the changes.
Let's go slow. Just down here.
Yes.
Around
Kitugum
House.
That was a river, small channel there, river. So you get into a boat and you go towards Port Bell.
Up to the lake.
Yeah.
Wow.
Before of course the industrialization, because
1920.
we have the data. Yeah, we have that information. So you'll also find that around where Uganda Broadcasting Corporation used to have UBC used to have broadcasting station in Bugolobi there.
Yes.
That was what they call plantation. There were a lot of forest plantation there. So there was no water. That river here, that river was collecting water and going through down. Only the water was at the pier because we have data of the pier from 1902 when the Port Vale was established. That's when 1902. That's when we had, because the depth of Port Vale was there. We know now it has changed because it has become shallower than towards 1902 because of the dumping. So people used to go there and come back. But the changes that have come are the changes my colleague talked about, planning and so-called development changes that come into the city. Settlements, industries, and so forth. And the population. Population is one factor that we cannot ignore when we are discussing environment. Actually, you must bring population in the center of the discussion.
Inclusion, yes.
Inclusion of it there. Because Kampala was not like this in the 20s. There were very few people here. It was just a few. But it has changed. Now, how do we predict a change in terms of the environment? Now, our work is to say, okay, because of the population, we may not have the wetlands the way they were 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
So what do we do? That's why in the ministry, we have now categorized wetlands or systems in terms of higher risk, category R, red category, blue category, and white category. The red category, like Lubiji, we said you don't go there.
Disaster.
You go there, we remove you. Because we know Lubiji,
Anytime.
that is a functioning ecosystem that is doing a lot of cleaning of the city. We go to Nakivo. So the others have counted, that's why now you see people are growing rice. We've tried to get them out. We say, okay, you grow rice, but can you do it in a manner that is economically viable? Most of the people grow rice at a loss. By the time you are selling rice, you're already at loss. Actually, you are not the one selling. It's the data.
The middleman.
Yeah, selling. The one we owe money. So those changes in population have also brought changes in how people survive. And most of the pressures have come on the environment. So I think what based on your question, I say what we would want to do is predicting the changes. One, first, if we try to get 70% of the laws implemented, get the population appreciate that you can benefit from that environment maximally if you do like this.
Population inclusion. Yes.
Because I'm telling you, rice growing is done in China, India, whatever, in
Vietnam,
marshlands. But do they do it as we do here? No. They first have to secure water. There has to be a dam so that they can grow the rice throughout the year. They have it 3 times a year. That is when you can get money as a farmer.
Yet here we have...
You grow once, or when the floods come, rice is like this, the water goes to this level, you are done.
Oh, yeah.
0. That year you have failed. Again, you start the next year. So if you go, if the farming is done in a manner that sustainability is the objective, then we can get profitability. That means we can increase the productivity of that where the people are growing rice, produce more rice with less acreage, or plant alternative aquatic plants that can give you more money. So those are the predictions that will guarantee us. Those if we implement those aspects in terms of managing our resources, then we can predict that we shall have these systems in place for the next. But I tell you, my colleague talked about the leaders. We've had the discussion with the leaders, particularly political leaders.
Oh, yes.
Their dimension.
They are wavering.
They are not. They will never be with you all the time. Yeah. Because of thinking that the population wants to do bad things. So, okay, for the time being. But that population, within that population, there are people who want to have a healthy environment. So the transformation, the prediction of a future of environment will be influenced by factors like political leadership, particularly local. It's not even at high level.
No, local leaders.
Local leaderships, yeah. The MPs and the councillors.
Councillors. I saw the councillors at Panda Pier in
Luzira.
Yes.
Yeah. Look at those guys. They're underwater and they're saying we're not moving.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So now a councillor is there. Now, are you normal? Are you normal? Because water is here, bilharzia is coming, diseases, mosquitoes. Oh, yes. So you are really thinking low, but the councillor wants you there because you're going to vote for him.
Yes.
So these local level people, we have had a clear direction from the presidency, very clear. But when you go down, it gets clogged. The reality comes in.
That's where the challenge is.
The reality comes in. Wow. Government has established projects, if you remember, very many irrigation projects in the country, very many. But most of them are based on water which is in the wetlands. Now, if the wetland disappears, the irrigation project becomes
irrelevant.
It has nothing
Absolutely.
to do.
Well explained there. Now, coming back to Dr. Tom Babikwa, when you look at, rather Dr. Daniel Babikwa, when you look at the warning systems we have, our early warning systems, are they effective for other disasters such as landslides, droughts, prolonged rain seasons? At least I saw the siren in the eastern Mbali. That makes a lot of noise. Whee! and it goes so far, and you get to know possibly the rains are coming, and they're going to be very heavy. But coming back to the science that you practice at NEMA with other agencies, are our warning systems effective?
Well, they would be effective if the people were environmentally literate, if they were aware. You can have all the information, you can have all the science and the facilities, but you can only make use of what you have when you know how to use it and when you understand it. And at times, the information we have, the level of dissemination, and the willingness to receive it by the people. How do we value information as Ugandans? How do we value government, the word from government? I give you an example. Before the Bududa landslides came in, they were warned.
Yeah.
People were told, get out of this place or else you're going to have disaster.
They said the gods will be on their side.
They said our ancestors were buried here, were born here, our gods are here. So finally they stayed. Some of them, unfortunately, I don't know whether they have ever worshipped their gods again, or they have joined them where they are.
It was a disaster.
Now, that's another thing. We need to create a level of awareness which is critical, where people will understand and also act. As a nation, our communication channels, our level of reaching out needs to be upped up in a way. But also the willingness of the public to understand and respect what comes from government, what comes from science, is also very paramount. One of the challenges we have with many of our people is that there's a lot of communication channels, so many radios, so many TV channels, but what do people listen to?
Music.
Music.
And you know that's painful. Dr. Tom, you can laugh about this, but let me tell you, it's very painful. It shows the direction of the nation where we are. If you've been to the Netherlands and Holland.
I live there.
You've lived there.
Yeah.
You see the programs they run on TVs every morning.
Yes.
It directly falls into the national framework, the direction the nation wants to achieve.
Exactly.
When you come back here in Africa, Lord, oh Lord.
It's true, it's true. I lived in Japan, and I remember every day in the morning, they would tell you the weather forecast. And they would warn you, say, by midday, we expect a typhoon. So the offices must close by 11 and people go home. But even if you did that one here
in Uganda,
people will still be found in Owino.
People to leave their kids.
Exactly.
But maybe let me add a bit. Our colleagues at the Uganda Meteorological Authority issue guidelines on weather alerts.
Oh, yes.
They do give the seasonal weather patterns.
Oh, yeah.
And the science of predicting this weather is now much more better because they do it at the regional level. Now, they read this weather situation. Who in the public listens to the weather? They will tell you that. In fact, they announced that they were going to have above normal rains. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Nothing.
And they don't care what.
Don't care. So then, so the public has for long taken scientific information given for granted.
Oh, yes.
They don't capture it.
Oh, yes.
They don't listen to it. So once it's given, they say that is the usual. These people are liars. And I've seen one politician on TV that these meteorology people, one time you tell us this is raining, whatever.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, like that. That's one. Two, if there is information, you know, they have talked about this COVID, which is now here.
And
there's
it's
been a
here.
lot of it, a lot of explanation, a lot of talk. But there are receptors of information at local levels who will translate that information the way they want. And that's the way to be taken by people. And that's the challenge that we have. So early warning systems are very important. So I think should be, maybe if we are like, should have been put in the manifestos of political parties to ensure that people listen Maybe, you know, it can go there. People should listen to this information that comes. If the weatherman says it's going to rain today, please prepare, everybody should listen that this is what it means.
It's
not
coming.
to, you know. And then every day you are a victim of uncertainty when actually information has been given. Information is given. So this is the challenge that we have here in the country. But also, just as my colleague was saying, generation of information, interpretation of information, consuming the information, we have the media here.
Oh, yes.
If the whole, so many radio stations were saying this is important,
Yeah.
I think would the message will reach people.
For some reason, I will take the swipe for the media. We have not been helpful to cover the climate change as it should be taken up, and we can do better. We're going to do this.
Thank you.
I can assure you, Doctor. I give this pledge to the nation on national television. We're going to find lasting solution as media as how we can cover this. But let's talk about the prolonged droughts. In some places, we've had prolonged droughts. Dr. Babikwa, with all that coming in play, what could be the call to action of citizens in those particular areas?
Well, as my colleague, my ED was saying, already by the time the droughts come, we have some information, like from the meteorology department. They tell you when you're likely to get much rain and when you're likely not to get rain. And the adaptation measures which people should begin thinking about seriously. Right now, in a farming nation like Uganda, there's a lot of talk about smart agriculture. Using the resources you have in the most appropriate way, and making sure that there's no wastage at all. Adopting, for example, I'll give you an example which I saw in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country which does not have as much rain as Uganda, some of the places. But they have structured their country in such a way that where there are droughts, the government has developed, the agriculture department has developed the types of crops
that are fit for the drought.
If you are going to have rain for 2 months, they have maize which can grow in 2 months and you harvest it.
In your area.
Those are some of the adaptation measures which we need in this country. Where you know that even changing some of the activities, some of us are so stuck in what we've been doing for so long. You may know that in this place for us we grow matoke. But as time goes on, we begin realizing that the matoke have grown for some time. The nature of rain you have, it can no longer support it. Unfortunately, our tendency to change, our response to change has been very slow.
As citizens.
As citizens. But also maybe partly is a weakness on the technical and political arms of government. We need to do a lot of education, a lot of awareness creation. We've got agencies. We've got NADS. We've got wealth creation. Part of what they should be doing is to educate people about some of these things. Because it doesn't help you to give somebody seeds to plant when you know that the weather is not going to favor those seeds. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
At times you give somebody goats or pigs when he doesn't even have food to eat.
To feed his family.
So there's a lot of thinking that we need to do at different levels, especially on the side of government, but also on the side of leaders at the local level. And also tap into the local knowledge, local science. People who live in areas know what happens in those areas.
And they know how best
And they know how they respond in those different areas. But the challenge is that the linkage between citizen science and our other decision-making arms has been very low. When we come from our technical side at times, we come with all the science and all the information, but we may not be able to listen enough to what the communities have to say
Oh, yes.
about what happens. I think it's time to merge the two. So what is the citizen science saying and what is our real science
I will
saying?
tell you what I see, because as a journalist, I spend most of my time on the ground. There is the approach that is being used, it is top-bottom. Yet I think it should be bottom-up.
Yeah.
And this is the clash we're having, that even much as the ED and the other technical people will sit and strategize and say, this is the direction we're going to take. Because it comes from up, and up is not aware exactly what's happening on the ground, the receiving end is either going to be distorted or it will resent it, because there was no inclusion. And that's what Alia here alluded on. Let's go to the innovation bit. With all this going around, with climate change affecting us, COVID-19 in play as well, has this awakened the innovation with regards to environment? Have you seen some brains really active with regards to conservation in Uganda, in East Africa? And you're like, well, everyone could say it's a crisis, but it's a blessing in disguise, yeah.
Well, innovation is a way to go to survive these changes. And I have seen quite a number of innovation practices in the environment by some groups of persons. One of them, of course, as my colleague says, adapting
to the new normal.
To the new normal. Now, the new normal dictates that, for instance, now we have too much rain. Dictates that you must utilize, the population is big, so you have a smaller space of land. So I've seen, partly in the eastern part of Uganda, I've seen quite a lot of people now adapting to grow cashew nut at a large scale, and are growing it on a basis of scientific information, okay? And say within 2 years you start harvesting, you start getting the first fruit. And now people have done it, are growing it. There's innovation there, because people have said, I think we need to replace cotton, which used to be the dominant cash crop here.
Back in the days.
With another cash crop,
Yes.
which can be here forever. And I've visited some farms, very marginal land converted now for that growing. And I think the change is coming. The good of it is that the actors on the ground are the local people. They bought the ideas, they have bought it, they have believed it, they have swallowed it, and they believe that it will yield. And hopefully now, the government is working hard to organize. Right now there is a market, which is going to uptake that. There is also there are also innovations in terms of energy usage. Quite a number of people now moved to use quite very efficient stoves, so that they don't again use a lot of and at the village level.
Wow.
Before you said that there's a lot of fire in the village, but in villages there's no fire because of these trees. But now people have got innovative methods of cooking using. Actually, I went to one place. Some wood which used to burn very fast. If you put it in the fire, it burns very fast. The guy said, no, this wood is actually the fuel. They bungle it around cow dung, soil, and mix it up, and the fuel is inside there. It burns slower. Now these ones provide the heat. So, actually,
innovation is going on.
Innovation is going on, because they found out they can't get firewood, but they found out this. I don't know the name in English. I mean, yeah. But it's a wood, they put it inside, they mold it together with the soil and cow dung. And becomes very useful, and a lot of energy is saved. Big innovation, because that's driving change, because now you know you can't again survive using the other cases. There are also innovations that I've seen I can call it innovations. But if you look at there's a group that asked us permission to use a river bank, and they told us that we are going to use the river bank, but in a manner that we're not going to use the soil.
Okay. So what are they using it?
They went to they had visited the Kalangala to looked at these guys. They looking at the shells from the what.
From the lake?
No, from this plant.
Okay, the palm.
The palm tree, the shells from the palm tree, the pulp there.
Wow.
So they brought the pulp. The pulp is the base. So what they needed in the river was just have water. Now the solar now is around. They have a solar now pump, pumping water into this thing, and they are producing tomatoes at
This is interesting.
very, and they are not using chemicals. You know what they're using?
No.
They're using ash. But there's certain plant, certain ash that comes burned from a certain aquatic plant. That's the one they use now. And they're actually producing organic, and they've got a niche.
It's a very eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly, and a very, very big niche for export. And I was shocked. They say just need access to water.
Wow. So, Doctor, when you look at this, you started with a statement that they asked for permission.
Yeah.
What are the procedures for someone who is watching this, especially the youth, and they have innovations that are in the right grid of the direction of NEMA and the Ministry of Water and Environment? What are the procedures of getting this support? Because now this is an opportunity for them.
As I said, the laws in Uganda allow you to use part of those systems that are restricted. But how do you use it? In a manner that that is prescribed. So, if you want to use a wetland, if you want to use a river bank or whatever, you apply for permission through the district and then finally we issue you on certain conditions. There are issues that are allowed there that you can do, but not building a house, of course.
Of course.
Those are things that you can use maximally for that. People now, if you've looked out, Uganda is moving towards a lot of cage fish farming.
Yes.
2-3 years ago, when we started licensing cage fish farming, there was a lot of debate.
Yes.
But
is it feasible?
Is it
Won't
feasible?
affect the
People are
lake?
fearing that it's going to affect the lake. But I had been to the Mekong River Commission, my previous assignment. I had visited there, and the Prime Minister, who happened to have been my classmate, the Minister, who happened to have been my classmate in Europe, was very keen in meeting me and telling me that, here, there's cage fish farming. We are making $3 billion. And he said, if I was in Uganda,
I would be a rich man.
trillion. He said it's a trillion fishery industry.
Wow.
I said, okay. So when I joined NEMA, I said, I'm going to license the cage fish farming as an activity because it is productive. If done very well and under conditions that are ideal, you'll get fish that's almost like a wild fish, different from pond fish. And so cage fish farming we started licensing it because I visited and saw that
you came and you implemented.
It is a business. And I would encourage everybody now that, for instance, in the Nile there, we've got a lot of mass bodies. Karuma is coming. Behind Karuma, there is going to be calm water. Behind Isima, there is calm water.
Calm water, yes.
We will license you to do cage fish farming there because the water is flowing down much slow. And you can do it and produce fish at a higher level with a higher profitability. Now here in Uganda also, we have companies that are making pellet feed.
Yes, pellet
so
feeds.
Nothing goes. You feed exactly what the fish wants. That's all, no waste. So those are innovations to utilize the resources effectively.
And they add to the economy.
They add the economy. They can you yourself, your economy, but also the economy of the country.
Wow, interesting, Doctor. There is a question.